Howdy, Facebook, and welcome to our Lunch and Learn. Today we have a really special treat for you. We have with us a Navy SEAL Captain Arthur Castiglia. Thank you so much for joining us today, Arthur.
You're welcome, Michelle. Nice to be here.
Awesome. And we're going to hear a little bit from him shortly. But first, let's see what we brought for lunch. Diana, what'd you bring today?
I made avocado toast with tomatoes and hard-boiled eggs, and the tomatoes came from my garden.
That's so awesome. Oh, you're such a little green thumber. I love it. Arthur, what'd you bring today?
I have a protein bar and a seltzer.
That sounds delicious and healthy. Oddly enough, Diana and I were apparently on the same wavelength because I too am having avocado toast, though with a fried egg, not a boiled egg, and all the ingredients came from the local Riverside Farmers Market. So really excited to share that with you. And you can find information both about both pieces of toast down below in the links provided. So again, thank you, Arthur, for being here today. Tell us a little bit about how did you get to where you are today? I know a lot of people are really just fascinated by Navy SEALs.
So fortunate enough, I grew up in New York City and I was dying to get out and see the world. You know, I came from a modest background. My parents were both working class people. Very excited. I was always fascinated with, seeing the world and doing things. And, I had, lucky enough, one of my father's friends was affiliated with the SEALs, started talking to me. My dad was a New York City detective. And I just basically was like, hey, that's what I'm going to do. So 26 years later, here I am.
Wow, that's quite a career you've built in the military. Thank you so much for your service. It's really appreciated.
Oh, thank you, Michelle.
So I know, Art, that you have been in a leadership position since you went in the Navy over 20 years ago. That's right?
Correct.
Yeah. So we wanted to talk a little bit about some leadership skills. But before we do that, I know you went into a little bit about how you became a SEAL, but you have a broader background than that as far as leadership goes, right? You spent some time at the Army War College, also working in government affairs. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I've essentially commanded at every level in the SEAL. So you start off as an assistant platoon commander, platoon commander. You end up being an operations officer, an executive officer for the team, and then finally a team commander. And I've done essentially all of that. Also, I've had some leadership education. So I was fortunate enough to get selected to go to one of the service colleges, a war college, and that's a little bit of a misnomer. People don't really understand what you learn there. But the idea they teach you is basically to be a critical thinker and to look at high-level problems and how to problem solve at a very strategic level. So that's essentially it. So from there, I ended up going to the Pentagon. I was a deputy director for counterterrorism for almost 2 years, working under the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Operations. Most of what I did there was highly classified, so I can't really discuss it. But again, dealing with multiple interagencies, dealing with multiple problems. We were involved with guys that were in ground force combat, so it was serious business. Exciting stuff. And then after that, I became the CEO of my own company. So I transitioned back to the Navy Reserves, and I'm CEO of a company. We do defense contracting. We got a few different lines of effort, one being in fuel and industrial chemicals. Then we involved in medical devices and medical supply. We're now moving into the defense space. And since we started, we've captured almost 130 million in government contracts with my partner that I was lucky enough to find somebody that shared the same vision as myself. And we've basically just, continued to knock it out the park using a lot of these principles that I'll kind of discuss with you today that moving along. So.
Wow, that's
awesome.
Yeah. You've had quite the decorated career. I'm really impressed. So with all of this leadership knowledge that you've learned throughout that time, what have you found most useful when transitioning into being a CEO of your own company?
So people are people, right? Essentially, what you do, getting people motivated and moving things along it's, I don't want to say it's a simple product because it's science and it's art at the same time. But what I found that works for me essentially is the model of servant leadership. So the idea of servant leadership is that you, as a leader, are setting the environment for your people to be successful. So what you're doing is you're taking, you are empowering them to be successful. What you do is you push the decisions down to the lowest level. If we have a salesperson that's working for us or if it's working on a contract, he thinks that's what's going to happen and that's the way we should do it. Well, we go with that direction because he's the closest to the action, much in the same way that we did things in the SEALs. And that would be, we have an E5 who's the lowest ranking guy there, and he is the jump master for the jump that day. And the admiral's on the plane, and he says, hey, the winds don't look right, things aren't good, we're not jumping. Well, we're not jumping, it doesn't matter. He's positional authority, he's the closest to the action, he makes the decisions. That being said, with servant leadership, so the big part of that is, as a leader, you are not only setting the environment, but you're setting sort of the plan and more importantly, the vision, right? You got to think about, hey, what do I want this organization to be when I grow up? So, and you're going to get everybody in your team to buy into that, right? So the way I look at things is we have a very simple strategic calculus that we go through, right? We look at things very binary. Everybody you deal with, everybody involved in your organization is either adding or subtracting, and that's it. If they're adding, they're on board. If they're subtracting, they got to get cut loose. And as cold as that sounds, it actually saves you a lot of headaches. So I would tell people that are listening, that are thinking about that, one, your job is to set the environment. Two, you need to cut dead weight when you need to. The biggest thing is then comes down to vision, right? What do you want this company to be? When you have everybody that believes in that vision, you can do really amazing things. And the best example I can think of that is with John Kennedy. All right, so they have a story and a picture of him talking to one of the janitors at NASA when they were trying to put guys on the moon. And he walked up and he introduced himself, and he was the president talking to the guy who was mopping the floors, and he said, well, what are you doing here? He says, I'm helping to put a man on the moon. So that's the best example I can think of as shared vision. Really powerful stuff. Right? This guy's mopping up and he's cleaning up, but he doesn't think that he's doing that. He is a part of the team that is putting people on the moon. And that's when you can get people to do that, it's very exciting. And look what they've accomplished.
Yeah. I really like that. Go ahead.
You talked about, you said some of the leadership principles. So one of them is having a shared vision. Mm-hmm. What other leadership principles would you say have been an integral part of your success?
Well, I mean, you want to be able to plan. You want to be able to analyze what you're doing. That's a big thing, right? You need to lay out, you need to gather information, you need to do things. A big thing for leadership is you got to be the voice that stays positive. So that's extremely important when you need to stay positive when you're doing things. And that affects everyone, especially on leadership. There's a thing called the imposter syndrome, right? A lot of people have failings on it where a psychologist went into Harvard with the incoming class and he essentially asked the kids there saying, hey, how many people think somebody should have got your spot, should have been there instead of you? And 75% of the kids raised their hand and said, yes, I don't know, man, maybe there's somebody there. Well, obviously all those kids belong there. But that's just the point, is that everybody has these doubts, this self-doubts about themselves. You want to, along with that being positive, right, you have to visualize success. You have to visualize what you want to do, you know what I mean? And if you can't even do it, you don't believe it, well, fake it till you make it. Yeah. Along with planning, on the opposite side of that, you have to also understand that there's no such thing as a perfect plan or perfect execution. You're going to have things that are going to go wrong. It's just part of the theory of chaos in society. It just happens. It's one of those things. So another part of it is how do you respond to that, right? Big thing that I see a lot of people fail at is they don't know how to process failure, right? They don't know how to accept the loss. And you need to look at, the way I look at it is an NFL quarterback, right? A cornerback, right? Their job is essentially cover the best receiver on the thing, and they get burned all the time for touchdowns. And usually when you see a big play, there's some cornerback that just got toasted and he's looking at it. They say that, I played cornerback in high school and college. They say that one of your biggest traits is to have a short memory. And that's what I mean. So the way that we've kind of looked at that, and we've lost a ton of contracts, and my partner and I have done tons of things wrong throughout our stuff. And we've done tons of things wrong this seal, but the bottom line is that we always debrief, we always analyze what we did, and we look at it like this. You're either winning or you're learning, right? You're either in the win column or you're gonna debrief and find something that's gonna make you better. And a lot of people don't do that. They have a failure to launch because they're afraid of failure. And that is a huge, huge stumbling block for anybody that's looking to be successful. I don't care what industry it is. I don't care what you're doing. I don't care what you're doing, whether you're running a business, whether you're working in a corporation, whether you're a Navy SEAL. If you're afraid to fail and you can't get out of your own way, you do that. We're our biggest enemies. Okay.
Yeah,
we are hands down our biggest enemies. Negative self-talk will kill you faster than anything else, more than any of the other people you deal with. So
we've just been listening to, I just sent Michelle a podcast about reframing your thoughts. And then I put up a blog from our friend Gabe Arroyo, who's been a guest on our show as well, about how shooting yourself, right? And he talked about reframing thoughts, and now you're talking about reframing thought. It's like a theme, right? Because you're right, that what you tell yourself, what is it, Michelle, that they say your cells eavesdrop on your thoughts?
Right. So whatever thoughts you have, will create your emotion and your action. And so then becoming who you are. A thought is just a thought if you let it pass, but it can become more than that if you give it power.
And I think because of what's going on with COVID and everything, there's a sense of isolation. Like we're not going out as much, we're not seeing our family and friends as much, and you're really kind of, I feel like, stuck more with your thoughts, right?
Totally.
So Art, how do you, like, I'm sure, like, going through buds and going through the war college and just your everyday life, there's times where you are down, or your thoughts aren't where they need to be. How do you, like, refocus yourself to move forward and to not have a failure to launch?
So this kind of goes into two different things, right? There's, organizationally, and right, there's personally. Personally, a big thing you have to have is some sort of work-life balance, where you have to find that thing that you like doing to kind of decompress, right? You can't be on at all times. And I see people that do that, and they sort of do that. They get hyper-focused, and then they end up burning out. I think that's a mistake, right? You need to kind of plan for 4 quarters of football. You need to do things and manage yourself, and then keep stuff in it, right? I like to go to the gym. It's a big thing with me. I have certain things that I do that just sort of kind of take me out of that moment for the day and do that. And I think that's part of it. In crisis, at any level, personal crisis, organizational crisis, Navy SEAL crisis, Pentagon crisis, I found, I've kind of done 2 things, and it's really worked for me. One, the biggest thing you can do is you can only control what you can control, right? You can't control anybody else. You can't control any external factors. You can't control who's talking to you, who's not talking to you, what things that you can control. The only person you can really control is what you do. And a lot of people have to remember that, right? You know what I mean? You have to kind of say, all right, what can I do to make things better right now? That's on me, right? Because a lot of people talk about, well, they did that. Well, they did this, we did this. No, that's not the way to look at it. The way you look at it is you got to have the mental, fortitude to look yourself in the mirror and go, look, whatever happens to me, good or bad, is my fault. All right. Personal responsibility. Whatever I accomplished, good. Whatever I accomplished, bad, is my fault. This is what I did. The other thing too is I find that when you get faced with an overwhelming situation, and it happens all the time, and I've been involved in it a while, but the biggest thing that I find is that you got to turn big problems into little problems. Okay. Example from the SEALs. We do what's close quarters combat. Okay. Essentially, there's a bunch of bad guys in a building. We're going to go in there and fight it out with them. Everything you do is procedure when it comes into that, because it's chaos. You're in close quarters, and we may be entering from multiple sides of the building, and it's live rounds. I mean, it's real. So to deal with this chaos, you need procedure. To need procedure, you need to close head, right? But you know, as a leader, I'm thinking, all right, well, we got to go 2 rooms deep. We got there may be a hostage in there. We have some unknowns. You don't know. I mean, you got a million things going to your head. What you need to do is take that big problem. What do I need to do right now? Okay. Big problem to little problem. Okay. I'm going to watch this area. Then I'm going to go to the next problem. Then I'm going to do that. So they used to say that thing, how to eat elephant, 1 bite at a time. Well, it's actually true. It works. And that's the way I look at it. So you look at the current COVID situation, and people are faced with a whole host of problems, economic problems. There's protests going on. There's things, a lot of stuff. One, control what you can control, and take your problem and shrink it into little bits, right? Bruce Lee said this, and I always remember this because I was a huge Bruce Lee fan. He said, inch by inch is a cinch, yard by yard is very hard. So, you know,
Great quote.
when you go through SEAL training, you know what I mean? People look at the 6 months, and that's when it messes with their head and they walk out. Okay. What you need to go is you need to go from morning to lunch, and then from lunch to dinner, and then from dinner, getting your stuff together for the next day and starting it over again. And you need to break that huge problem of 6, 8, 10 months, however long you're going to be there, into one meal at a time. Right. And that's what I did. And that's how it kind of helped me focus and get through it. So when you're faced with any kind of situation, and I'm sure you guys are dealing with a lot, you know, with regards to the uncertainty around the market and things like that, move down from one big problem into a bunch of little problems and start attacking those problems one by one. It'll make it a lot easier for you.
That's some really great advice on perseverance.
Right? Like the compound effect of working out. Like you don't work out 5 hours in one day and all of a sudden you're fit. You have to do like a little bit, right? 30 minutes a day over a long period of time. And then you start to see results, compounding. And I think it's the same thing when you're breaking problems down, right? I mean, I do that. Days that I'm having a tough day, I just, okay, like what can I get done right now, right? That's gonna like move things forward in the direction we're going toward.
So one of my trainers used to say, you know, he said, look, you look to get 1% better every day, no matter what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And sometimes just getting yourself to the gym is that 1% better when you weren't going to go. Right. You know, sometimes that's it. That's you're in the win column. Sometimes it's doing things. I mean, I know a list of stuff that I have to do as CEO is usually a mile long, and I have 15 things I got to do, and I'm gonna get 4 of them done. But right. I'm going to do 4 of them right, and I'm going to go through it, and then I'm going to push the stuff to the next day that I can do.
Before the next day, or the next day.
Yeah, and that's how it happens. And you know, things continually stack up, and you know, you guys probably deal with that. I mean, you're dealing with big transactions. You deal with a lot of people's lives. You know, probably the biggest purchase a lot of folks. So you have people counting on you. So I understand, you know, that feeling of responsibility that you guys feel at times. You know, but that's how you got to move through it. You know, big problems and little problems.
Big problems and the little problems.
Hey, I just wanted to take a really quick minute and thank everybody who's joined us here today and encourage you to ask questions of Art. Any questions you have on dealing with crisis, leadership, motivation, he's really a great guy for that. So please ask some questions and take a moment and like us, but really we want you to love us rather than like us. So like or love us, join us on our Facebook page, and please ask questions of Art. He's here to give us some of his great knowledge.
And you know, Art, one of the things you were talking about was putting trust in your people. So I know I'm going back a little bit. We were talking about leadership a little earlier, and how you trust even, you know, the lowest ranking individual, like the janitor or the E5, you said, with the decisions that they are put in charge of. How have you ever struggled, or do you have advice for anyone who has trouble with relinquishing control? Because we do all want to control not just what we can control, but sometimes everything. I know I do as a high D. I have a hard time relinquishing control to others. What advice could you give for that?
So, that's a tough question, right? There's a couple things you got to remember. One, normally the person has the information as the person's closest to the action. So that's something that you got to kind of think about, like, hey, here's the deal. Two, one goes with selecting the right people. Okay. In the SEALs, we go through this extensive selection process to get the people that we believe like fit the mold of what we're looking for. Mm-hmm. Majority of people don't make it through. So that's it. So the guys that do make it through are pretty exceptional. And yeah, there's times that guys slip through the cracks, and there's constant selection that's going even when you're in the SEALs. I mean, people understand, they think you make it through SEAL training in the club. Doesn't work like that. We get rid of people all the time. You know what I mean? You made it through SEAL training, you went on your first deployment, well, now you get a DUI, you're out. And that's how it works. So it's, selection is part of the process. With regards to training is a big deal, right? You have to give, that's what I mean by setting the environment. You have to give them access to training. You have to give them your time to do that, to make sure that they kind of understand and they have the vision. They understand your vision and your strategy, what you're looking to do. So they're going to execute basically on your behalf. The way I looked at it is that collectively, right? I have a team of 15 people. The 15 people, the other 14 people's brain power is way more than my one person's brain power, right? Ultimately, I make the final decision, but I rely on those guys to give me their input, to put it that way. So that's where you got to kind of understand it. Now, look, there's a lot that goes into that, right? There's a lot of trust that needs to be built through the selection process, through training along the way, through the shared suffering. But when you're ready to execute and they're a fully, I don't know what you say, like vested member of your team, they're a fully like integrated person on your team. Well, obviously you got to relinquish that control to do that. And that's the way I always think about it. Collectively, everybody's a little smarter than one person. And then when they're engaged, you got to take that with a grain of salt. I mean, we were going to war, right? We were going to places that was very serious, right? If somebody messes up, there's definite chance that you or one of your buddies can get killed. So it's not hard to focus people when those are the consequences. You can't get much higher there. You need to see those people, personnel is always the bottleneck in any industry. It doesn't matter what you're doing, right? Look at the police right now. They've gotten some of the wrong people in the police that are in there, and look at the amount of problems that small percentage of police officers have caused for the entire industry.
Yeah.
It's insane. You know what I mean? How they have a much more outsized, their impact has been way magnified, with doing what they're doing. So that's part of it. I mean, the biggest thing, I'm rambling a little bit right now, but there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, I would summarize it as proper selection of personnel, proper training with them, proper setting of environment. And that means, adequate resourcing, adequate, access to what they need. And then, obviously you need to relinquish control a little bit, to the point that's, you need to walk them through and go, hey, here's how we do things. Procedure is a big part of it. Have you standing operating procedures that are filed. But ultimately, if they're the closest one, they're dealing with the clients all the time, they're dealing with the person, they're on the decision, you sort of got to defer to them and allow them to do it. And sometimes mistakes are going to happen. But like I said, go back to what we were talking about. Either you're winning or you're learning.
Right. Oh, that's
Art, I have a question. Sorry, Michelle, I cut you off, girl. Okay. So Michelle and I are really big into like self-improvement and self-help and just always trying to like grow as people, right? Our whole team, everybody on the team is like that. So morning routine is super important, I think, to everyone on our team. And we talk about it a lot, like in the self-improvement world, right? Like, how do you set yourself up for a good day? What's your morning routine? How do you, use that to kind of motivate you? Because I know when I don't follow my morning routine, the rest of the day it just kind of goes downhill, right? It's hard to pick it back up if you didn't start it right. What is your morning routine, Art?
Well, so things are a little, I'm going to give you a generalized answer to this because I think that it's a little bit different, right? I think people need to figure out how they work, what works for them, right? Morning routine may not be the right answer for everybody. Okay. I'm not I know a lot of people get up at 4 a.m. and they think they get a jump start a day and they get their workout done. They do that. I mean, that's not really the way I work. I mean, I get up at reasonable time, 7:30, and then I get my day going with regards to that. I have breakfast, I do things. I mean, I have found that me personally, my productive work areas are the morning till like 2 o'clock. At 2 o'clock, I start fading out. And then I usually pick it up at late at night after, after everything's settled down and when I get into, when I'm done with all my stuff for the day, workout, eat dinner, things like that, and I don't have anything going on and it's nice and quiet, that's when mentally I start to think about, what I'm doing. I start reflecting on the day stuff. If I need to send out some firming emails, if I need to prep my day for tomorrow, like I kind of do it the night before. And that's just sort of the way that my mind works operate, right? I have a productive period early in the day and I have a productive period late at night. And then my middle hours where I'm kind of tired, I sort of do if I got to run to the bank or if I got to do those are kind of the non-focused activities in my life that I have to do. Like I go to the gym, I go to the things like where I don't need to determine it. I mean, that's just kind of how it works for my schedule. The point of that is that a lot of people need to find out what works for them, right? The traditional model of going to work at 9 and leaving at 5, I don't really think it works, and I don't really think it's healthy for everybody, right? It's just not doing that, right? You get tired. I mean, me in the afternoon, I get tired like 3 o'clock. I'm not really focused. Yeah, if I have to get something, I do. But if I choose to get something done, no, I'd rather go to the gym at that time and kind of, burn it out because I'm like mentally, I've already kind of expend a lot of that mental energy in the morning. And then I sort of like have the thing and I relax and then I pick it up later in the evening. That's just how it kind of works for me. I know a lot of people have it a little bit differently and what works for them is what works for them.
I think it takes a little bit of trial and error to find out what really works for you. And actually, if you guys are interested, check out Hal Elrod. If you haven't heard of him, he talks about the miracle morning. Though it's specifically about morning, it has a lot to do with what Art's saying, and it helps you kind of focus where you want to put your energy and how you want to work your day, and just focusing on that can help you improve that. So some really amazing tips. Art, it has been so awesome having you on here. Really, just like I could seriously talk to you for like another hour and not run out of questions because you are just like a wealth of knowledge when it comes to leadership and self-improvement, which is something I hold near and dear to my heart. So thank you so much for coming on. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. Really appreciate you being here. We do this for you. So, Art, so go ahead. Sorry, Diana.
Oh, I was just going to ask for the 3 tips.
Yes.
Oh, and also before you mention Art, we will put a link to Hal Elrod's book below. It's an awesome book if you haven't read it. And it does focus on the mornings, but like Art said, I mean, your routine can be anytime, right? Like whatever works for your body and your mind. It's a really good book. So Art, at the end of every show, we ask for 3 tips from our guests. So can you give us 3 points on either leadership, motivation, or anything really that, I mean, you're such an incredible person. So just any tips from you would be great on just general life.
Well, I would just think of a couple things. One, make your life easy, you know what I mean, as you go through, right? Keep things simple, right? If you have this big convoluted plan, it's usually very prone to disaster, right? Keep things simple. If you run into some sort of issue, right? Big problems and the little problems, okay? Break your problems down. Whatever your goal is, if you're trying to achieve a goal, you know what I mean? Like Bruce Lee said, inch by inch is a cinch, yard by yard is very hard. The other thing too is that, you know what I mean? Your people come first. You gotta, if you're the boss, you gotta defer to them. I mean, your job is to make their job easy and to make them productive. So look for ways to do that. You know, and make sure you give, you know, be humble in your life. You know, when you are the guy in charge, I mean, you're going to reap ultimately the financial benefits. Give them the, you know what I mean, the psychological salary too. Give them the credit that they deserve. Push things to them way. Let them know that they're appreciated. It'll go a long way. You know what I mean? They used to say in the military, you got two salaries. You know, one was a you know, what you got paid, and the other one was your psychological salary, which was way outsized, you know, being a part of an elite group, being around all these great guys, going around the world and being able to do this stuff, you know what I mean? Having that, you know, that pride and that honor that you had, you know, for your team that you went through, and you know, being able to serve your country in that capacity was always a really cool thing. And I always felt, you know, I was very, very wealthy in that respect.
That's
Anyway,
amazing.
thank you very much for letting everybody come on board, and I'll be
Thank
happy
you,
to come
Art.
back anytime.
Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. Join us next week for another Lunch and Learn. And check the links below for Hal Elrod's book and Michelle and I's avocado toast. That was totally by accident, by the way. Two great minds think alike. And love us, like us, join us on our Facebook page.
Yeah, and remember, we'll have Art's tips below on how to be awesome. And so thanks again for joining us today.
Bye, everyone.
Follow the red ribbons.